and welcome to 40k Rants Live. We have people in chat here. Say hello, chat. If you're here live to discuss this question, and the brief we're talking about today is why is it cool to hate on the Ultramarines? I have a few ideas here to go over in my own mind, and of course in the videos we go through. I will also be reading from chat as we go through and discuss just why. It seems pretty goddamn cool to actually hate on the Ultramarines and not like them very much. I have 5 points that I want to make during this video. The first one is about jealousy. Alright? Now, a lot of Ultramarines fans will say, you know, Ultramarines, we are the poster boys of 40k, we're on all the box art, we're the ones who represent Space Marines and the Imperium, most of the stories are about us because we're awesome, and you're all just jealous. Now, there's something to be said about that. I actually think that's kind of true. I think a lot of people are kind of jealous about Ultramarines, if I'm going to be honest with you, because we all wish that Games Workshop would give our faction as much love and care and attention as they seem to give to the Ultramarines. But I've also seen people in chat say before that they like the fact that Games Workshop don't give them any love and attention because they can't write worth a damn. But that is neither here nor there. But I understand why that jealousy is a thing. I absolutely understand why people would say, why do you get all of those things to yourselves, right? The second point I'd like to make is that they're bloody everywhere. You cannot shake a dead cat without hitting an Ultramarine. When there's anything going on in 40k that's worth its salt, the Ultramarines are going to be there. They're going to be around, they're going to be doing things, and they're probably going to be affecting all of the ins and outs of the Imperium as it goes on. You know, let's have a little look-see at our chat just to see what people are saying about the Ultramarines. Gertie says, no, you're wrong. Okay, fair enough. Dirty makes a really cool point, though. He says, because they lost their character, models, and lore. Look at the Ultramarines, look at the Death Guard. One of them is afraid to dream. Yeah, okay, alright, okay. Jethrick says, to be fair, them being overused is Games Workshop's branding and relentlessly pushing at the point of sale by the ground troop staff is also a big factor. It's like rolling your eyes at a Real Madrid fan. I've noticed this. There is a lot of football nuance when it comes to talking about Ultramarines and why they're so popular, right? Yeah, I also thought that before. A lot of the big teams will say, you don't like us because you're jealous of our success, you're jealous of all the things that we get. But there are a lot of other fans out there of other football clubs who are a lot smaller, who say, I'd rather not support you, I'd rather support my team and suffer, because it means that my wins are worth more than yours. I absolutely cherish my wins a lot more than you cherish yours. There's something to be said for that. Can you imagine being a Carcharodons fan and finally getting those Red Tithe books? Do you know what I'm saying? You know, that must have felt good as a Carcharodons fan. You must have felt like, oh my god, this is amazing, right? I don't know. Commander HHL says, bland, just plain bland. It's a faction for tourists. Oh my god. Okay, alright, okay. I'm going to push back against that. I don't think Ultramarines are a faction for tourists. Do you know why? Because most of the people I know who play Ultramarines are really old school wargamers. They're wargamers who see that everybody hates something, and in au contraire status, they choose that faction to play as. Simple. Yeah? A lot of Ultramarines players now are not beginners. In fact, if you see a Space Marine player and they bring out Ultramarines, by and large, that person's probably a veteran. I'm being serious, they're probably a veteran. You know? Now, if you see Carcharodons, that's far more likely, in my opinion, to be a newbie or someone coming in who just thinks that, you know, Ultramarines are really bland and not very cool, and they go off and they do something else, right? But a lot of the older guys play Ultramarines. Justin says he's talking about me. Yeah, there we go, right? Chase Martin says, I think it's simply because it's easier to package and sell Space Marines if they focus on one chapter. There is a cohesive design and the transfer sheets all match in the box. Yeah, okay, yeah, I'm with you on that one. But on the flip side, I also think that if you bring out Space Marines in all different colours and shapes and sizes, people would still understand that that is a Space Marine, right? It all depends on how you do the box, is what I'm saying. You can have the Space Marines be different colours on the front of the box. It doesn't, in my opinion, it doesn't really matter. I get what you're saying. I do. And it's part of my brain that's rebelling against my own reasoning and saying, listen, you know he's right. You are kind of right. Yeah, you are kind of right. In terms of marketing, it is much easier to say, these blue guys are Space Marines. Right? That's what Space Marines are. You know? Sergio says, lots of plot armour. You will get into that in a minute. Brandon says, it's the most sterile chapter to push toy soldiers on little Timmy. And Jethrick says, you've got a point there for sure. It's similar with the Wolves too. If it's not a cringe stereotype, a Wolves player is usually a 40-year-old bloke with a beard. There's little in the middle. Yes, exactly. I've noticed this about Ultramarines players a lot. Is that they do tend to be dads, they tend to be people who are very well versed in the lore, and they see that everybody hates Ultramarines and they try and rehabilitate their image by playing them. If you're one of those people in the comment section, tell me, right? Number 3, the third point I wanted to get to, is their stories are bland and can only ever end in one way, by the Ultramarines winning. Now, can anybody actually tell me a section of lore or a story where the Ultramarines don't win in the end? Because I'm telling you now, the Ultramarines even win in other people's books. Devastation of Baal, I'm talking about you. Blood Angels, I'm talking about you. Ultramarines even turn up to win at the end of that book. You know, whenever the Ultramarines turn up, you can close the book, because you know how it's going to end. It's kind of like, remember when John Cena was like winning all the time? In the early 2010s? Whenever John Cena got involved in a storyline, you knew that storyline was done. It was finished because he was going to win, and that's the end of that. He was never going to lose. Lol, Cena wins again, right? Close the chapter. It's finished. Whenever I see Ultramarines turn up in the lore, whenever I see them turn up on, say, a campaign book, or maybe it be a book series, I know how this scene is going to end. The Ultramarines are going to win, and everybody's going to talk about how badass and awesome the Ultramarines are. They never really get a bloody nose, unless you're talking about 30k Ultramarines. Ultramarines who aren't from the modern setting. 30k Ultramarines, somebody said it before in the chat, 30k Ultramarines are pretty badass. They're pretty cool. And they do lose. They lose at Calth, right? They lose vast amounts during the Shadow Crusade. They don't get to Terror on time. They make mistakes. 40k Ultramarines, not so much. Not so much. Matthias says, they get their asses handed to them by the Tyranids, but then they win. Exactly. That's another big problem with the Tyranids, by the way, and I'll get into them at a different date, because the Xenos players deserve some love. But by God, the Tyranids are really, really difficult to write, and I applaud Devastation of Baal as a book for letting me get into the mind of the hive mind and knowing what they're thinking and their wins and losses and things. But the Tyranids basically exist to lose. That is what they are there for. They exist to be beaten by people like the Ultramarines. You know, the Ultramarines lose the Tyrannic War, the first Tyrannic War, and win. That is, you know, it just is what it is, you know. Justin says, that is a really hard sell in a grim, dark setting. Again, another reason why I think they're hated in such a huge way is that they are kind of leading the charge in the Saturday morning cartoonification of Warhammer 40,000, right? Whenever you see a more hopeful tone, whenever you see a tone that is more, shall we say, bright about Space Marines, it tends to be Ultramarines who are leading that charge. Now, the one thing we have seen in the past that is to do with Ultramarines, that is not, shall we say, hopeful and things like that, is the Space Marine 2 game, right? There is a very good reason I use some of its footage in our videos as we're going about. That's because the Ultramarines in this game are portrayed in a very dark manner. They are very grimdark, they are very matter of fact, they are very to the point. But that is because Space Marine 2 is written by hobby veterans. It's written by guys who've been in this hobby for decades by their own admission. These guys were brought up with John Blanche. They were brought up with Rick Priestley, with that nature of 40k, Andy Chambers, that kind of 40k. Grim darkness of the far future, the laughter of thirsting gods, and all that there within. The only hint we have that this is the brand new 40k is the fact that they're wearing Primaris Mark 10 Space Marine armor. That's it. There's literally no other marker here. This is grim dark. You see people getting torn apart, you see human settlements getting annihilated, you see absolutely hopeless situations going on all of the time. It is grim, it is dark, it is sci-fi awesomeness, and that is where we are with Space Marine. It is brilliant and I love it. But that just shows you how Ultramarines could be written if they took their head out their arses and actually did so, right? You know? Supernova says, they have lost all visual character and are just bland and generic with a personality lacking in comparison to other chapters like the Black Templars. Alright, okay. Alright. I see your point there. I see your point. Absolutely. Absolutely. In terms of character, okay, here's another point I'd like to make on the Ultramarine in terms of their character. Okay. The Ultramarines are very tactical, very stoic, and very level-headed, right? But here's my thing. When they're not that, it makes me even more annoyed. Right? When you've got the guy from Bolt Gun being all angry and World Eater-like, it makes me even more annoyed. Why? Because now they're stepping on the toes of other chapters. What, the other chapters can't even have that one thing? The Ultramarines have to be the best at that as well? You know? When they become really tactical and they can fall back and they can snipe people, can't the Raptors have this one thing? When they become really angry and really, you know, getting their chainswords out and things like that, can't the Space Wolves have this one thing? Every single time you give individual characteristics to Ultramarines to try and make them much cooler and much more diverse in their feeling, all they tend to do is step on the toes of other, more individualistic chapters. Why? Because the Ultramarines are so all-encompassing. They're already everywhere. So the minute you try and make them act like another chapter, they're immediately going to step on that chapter's toes and make it kind of not about them anymore. So the Ultramarines are caught in between a rock and a hard place. They are boring and bland, yet fair enough, but the minute you try and make them something else, they're immediately taking the limelight away from other chapters that desperately need it when the Ultramarines really don't. Yeah? Justin says, that's a good point. The Ultramarines are one of the only factions that can win without infesting, destroying, or nullifying the galaxy, but you can only do that so many times. Fair enough. Matthias says they're boring, and when they're not Ultramarines. That's kind of what I like about it, though. I have to admit, that's kind of what I like about it. I like that the Ultramarines are boring. I think that is where the individuality actually lies. I think Games Workshop would do a much better job with Ultramarines if they just said, you know what, fuck it. Let's make these guys the most Boy Scout, John Cena-esque dudes, and make them lovable for that. Let's make them even naive. Right? Let's make them just like, yes, honourable battle brother, yes, you know, that kind of a thing. Let's go all in on that and make them Ultramarines. That is what they are. They are Saturday morning cartoon heroes, and lol, the Ultramarines win again. If they just did that, I think a lot more people would find them quite lovable and quite funny, right? I think text-to-speech device did more for people loving the Ultramarines than anything Games Workshop have ever done over the past 30 years. Because they were silly. They never lost, and that was part of their character. They just never, ever lost. They were never allowed to lose. They hated the fact that they kept winning. That was funny. They lent into it. I'm not saying Games Workshop should make them a meme, but definitely lean into the fact that they're the main characters, right? Maybe even give it some sort of a warp thing where, you know, they believe so wholeheartedly in their own superiority that the warp just makes it happen. Do you know what I mean? The kind of human orcs. The Ultramarines are so single-minded that they act kind of like orcs. They become more powerful. They become unbeatable because they just truly believe they're the main characters in this story and they can't be beaten. That's more interesting than whatever you're trying to do now and giving them more individuality when all you're doing is stepping on the toes of other chapters. Wow, I was speaking fast there. I got into a flow. Whew, that's a flow state. Commander says, Ultramarines aren't that bad, at least they aren't Tau. Spits on the ground. Alright, fair enough, fair enough. They do make the perfect poster boys. Did Games Workshop just get something right? Well, yeah. Yeah, I think if you're going to choose a poster boy faction of Space Marines, the Ultramarines are a good pick, in my opinion. Matthias says, that's why they're great on the tabletop. No cringe, gimmicky crap. Yeah. We are the Indiana Jones of 40k, we always win. Well, it's kind of lovable, right? It's like when Dritz de Worden turns up. We're safe. Dritz never loses. Do you know what I mean? The same thing of when the Ultramarines turn up. We're safe. Ultramar, they never lose, right? You know? Number 4 was their hogging of the limelight means we see little of the other Marines. Now, this is very, very true. Linking into my last point, the more the Ultramarines are on screen, the less we see of everybody else. Apart from this devastation of Baal, okay, this is a message for chat. Apart from devastation of Baal and the Carcharodon books, when was the last actual novel you read about Space Marines that wasn't to do with the Ultramarines or an Ultramarines successor chapter? I'll wait. I will wait. Literally, I will wait. YouTube will also wait. By the way, YouTube, if you don't like waiting, then make sure you come on Sunday to one of our live streams where you can be involved in making these very videos. Little wink for you there. Supernova says, if the Ultramarines are always perfect, maybe give them the motivation to find an army or fight that will actually test them. Something like One Punch Man. Yeah, cool. Commander says, did North make a Smurf reference with that Saturday morning cartoon line? The Lion, Son of the Forest. That is a Primarch novel, not a Space Marine novel. Moving on. That is a Primarch novel about a Primarch. It has some Space Marines in it, but it's 90%, or maybe even more, about the Lion, right? It's a Primarch novel in all but name. No, but it actually is a Primarch novel. Okay, so we can't say 30k books, we can't say Primarch novels. They're about Primarchs. It is a good book, though, I agree. Very good book. So he says, but there are multiple other Space Marines in it. Yes, there are. But it's still a Primarch novel. Cypher Lord of the Fallen? Okay, yeah, alright. One. We've got one. So does the Night Lord trilogy not count? It does, because there's no Primarch in it. That's the one I was hoping somebody would talk about. Right, okay. So the Night Lord's trilogy was, in my opinion, the last big series of Space Marines that was not about Ultramarines. The last big one, right? Of course, you know, Carcharodon's all there, right? But there wasn't a big series. They were pretty small novels, right? So Night Lord trilogy. When did those come out? Night Lord trilogy. Release dates. Let's see. Night Lords series. 2010, 2011 and 2012. 15 years ago. That is where we are. 15 years ago. 1-5. For the past 15 years, Ultramarines have utterly dominated the novel market when it comes to Space Marines. You know, Spears of the Emperor, you know, Ultramarine successors. Are Sides of the Emperor Ultramarine successors? I swear they are. Of the Emperor, I swear they are. Let's see. I think they are. Yeah, Ultramarine successors. Sides of the Emperor, Ultramarine successors. So every single successor chapter you see with one of these novel series is an Ultramarine successor. Iron Snakes. The Iron Snakes. Are Iron Snakes? I bet they are. I bet they bloody are. Who was the Ultramarines? I'm telling you, the last 15 years, they've dominated every single bit of recourse and media on Space Marines. And that is a big shame. A very big shame. The one thing I know people didn't talk about was the War of the Beast novels. Alright? War of the Beast. Those are books with the Imperial Fists in them that don't really have Ultramarines in them. So I think that is one big thing. That is one big series that came out. But even then, the War of the Beast, I would say it's mostly about orcs. Even the front cover is in orc script, right? It's mostly about orcs. The Imperial Fists are in it, and they're really good books. But it's mostly about the Beast and the orcs and things like that, right? And how the Death Watch comes about, yeah? By and large, though, in terms of book series, I would say a good 90-odd% of the series that have come out in the past 15 years have been Ultramarines or their successors. Their sheer domination of the market leads to them being dull, literally, by default. Because that's all we ever seem to hear about. And number 5, they dominate what it means to be a Space Marine. If you're coming into the hobby and all you see is Ultramarines, 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 what would you think a Space Marine actually is? When you play the video game Space Marine 2, and you're not that into 40k, but you're getting into it, what would you think a Space Marine is? You'd think it's this blue guy here on the front. You wouldn't think there are any chapters at all until you got into multiplayer and see all these really weird colour schemes running around. And you know what you'll be thinking? You'll be thinking, wow, they painted their Ultramarines wrong. It's a shame, but that's where we are in terms of what that is, right? Those are the reasons why people, in my opinion, think it's kind of cool to hate on Ultramarines. Now, I do think they actually do have a... well, number one, if you hate them, you've got a point. But number two, it's not Ultramarines' fault, right? I think Ultramarines are epic and cool. I just think they can be epic and cool by being their own thing and staying in their lane and letting other people have some books from now on then. You know what I mean? It's not their fault Games Workshop loves them so much. It's not really their fault. They're so marketable. It's just what they are. What do you guys think in the comment section down below? Let me know. Chat, say goodbye to YouTube. And I'll see you next time. Have a good one. Love you a long time. Have a good one. Bye now.